Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to the general public here, the beautiful people of Nevis, those of St. Kitts, those of the wider Caribbean. Good evening to our friends and family in the United States and Canada, those in the United Kingdom. Good evening to our friends and family all the way in places like Taiwan, our students who are studying, and wherever you are, especially evening to you. My name is Mark Brantley, and I'm the host of On the Mark, and I am here, hopefully, God willing, with you for the next 2 hours from 8 o'clock, we are just about now, until 10 o'clock this evening. Every week we come with something that we hope is of interest to you. This show has now lasted for a decade and a half, right here on Von Radio, the Eastern Caribbean's only powerhouse, and the reason for this show is simple. We try to create a platform for us to have meaningful discussion and debate. We do not always agree. In fact, sometimes we disagree most strenuously. But I urge everyone to be reasonable in their views, to be moderate in their expression, and to understand that here at Von Radio, only the best will do. As I like to say, we can disagree without being disagreeable. For full disclosure, as those who are regular followers of the show would know, I am the lead of the Concerned Citizens Movement, a political party here on the island of Nevis, and I am also currently the Premier of the island of Nevis. I used to be the Foreign Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis and the Minister of Aviation in the federal government, but that ended yesterday. And so I am here in my capacity as Premier of the Nevis Island Administration, and of course I am here in my capacity as leader of the Concerned Citizens Movement. Now, the country has been in the midst of considerable intrigue, political intrigue, which I think is unfortunate and regrettable. Many moons ago, it now seems. In fact, it started just after the 2010 election campaign, the federal election campaign, when the anxiety that existed in the country had to do with the length of time that Dr. Denzel Douglas as Prime Minister had been in power. He had been in power at that point. It would have made 20 years for him, his fourth term, if I recall correctly. There was a feeling in the community, in the general public, there was a feeling amongst us who were opposed politically to Dr. Douglas and his Labour Party that he had been there for too long, and that, as the old saying goes, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so we had concerns, and we campaigned on those concerns. To meet the might of the Labour Party, we put together a coalition of parties: the People's Action Movement, led by the Honourable Sean Richards; the Concerned Citizens Movement, led by the Honourable Vance Amory of blessed memory; and the newly formed People's Labour Party, led by Dr. Timothy Harris, and at which point was a two-person party, he and the Honourable Sam Conda. History will show that Dr. Douglas, in his wisdom, decided to rid himself and his government of Dr. Harris, who had been in that government for some 18 years. It therefore means that Dr. Harris would have been there throughout the entire period of all the excesses that Dr. Douglas was accused of, and all the excesses his government was accused of. Notwithstanding, Dr. Harris indicated to us that he wanted a new position, he wanted a change, he wanted to create with us a new paradigm for governance in our country. And he, having been fired by Dr. Douglas from that government, and having had the noble Sam Conda resign in support of Dr. Harris. Sam Conda, let us recall, was Deputy Prime Minister, a very powerful position in the country. Sam Conda was not fired. Sam Conda resigned his position. If there was anyone who fell on his sword in a noble way, in the spirit of democracy and in the support of Team Unity, it was Sam Terence Conda. And so PLP was formed. And we, the three parties, PAM, CCM and PLP, set about forging a unit that we refer to as Team Unity. A unit comprised of three disparate parties, but a unit nevertheless that coalesced around certain core ideals and certain core concepts. And whilst I do not propose to list them all, I will list some. No Prime Minister, we said, should serve more than 2 terms. That was in direct response to our accusation at the time that Dr. Douglas had overstayed his welcome. We said that the island of Nevis, long locked out of the CBI proceeds and the inflows from our Citizenship by Investment program, that the island of Nevis would, going forward, be able to receive from that program an equitable share on a pro rata population basis. That sounds complicated perhaps, but all it means is that we would get a share based on the size of our population relative to the overall population of the country. Based on the population census that we last had a decade ago, that should have given Nevis in the region of 25% of that revenue. We agreed that in relation to candidates being fielded in various constituencies, that there would only be one candidate from Team Unity, meaning therefore that if the People's Action Movement had a candidate in a constituency, then we would all put our resources and our support behind that candidate. If the People's Labour Party did the same, we would put our support behind the People's Labour Party candidate. And if the CCM did the same, we would put our support behind the CCM party candidate. It was all for one and one for all. We looked at what was going on in the country, and we promised a better way. We promised a better relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis. We promised that we would seek to mend the age-old and historic differences between our two islands, our two people, and the political confusion that has always been part and parcel of the matrix of the St. Kitts Nevis political experience. We agreed that we would treat each other with respect, that this would not be any notion of personal advancement or self-aggrandizement, but rather it would be all of us working together, keeping in mind our noble goal, which is to serve the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. We agreed that decisions would be made as a collective, and that we would work together, seeking to have in the room the disparate ideas and disparate parties in the table to make a determination for Nevis, for St. Kitts, as the case may be. It was, as I like to say, no I in team and no me in unity. It was all about a collective, that we would take collective responsibility for decisions and we would proceed accordingly. We decided that the Honorable Timothy Harris, because of his long experience in the Labour Party government of the day, but also because we understood his own ambitions to be Prime Minister, that he would be the leader of the team, and if we were able to persuade the electorate, then he would become the Prime Minister. Indeed, I had the privilege at the launch of Team Unity at Greenlands Park so many years ago to introduce Dr. Harris as the next Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. All appeared well, so much so that I was tasked with the responsibility of documenting the commitments made to the island of Nevis. I say that, ladies and gentlemen, against the backdrop that the CCM, under the leadership of Vance Amory of blessed memory, had never joined any party on St. Kitts. In fact, most famously in 1993, the CCM, which held the balance of power, said that it would remain neutral. That was the position of Mr. Amory. That position changed when in 2015 and the months and years leading up to 2015, we put together this construct called Team Unity. CCM had its concerns. PAM had its concerns. No doubt, Dr. Harris and Sam Conda had their concerns, because we had come from such different directions to try and come together in what I have said and continue to say was the best political idea that our country had seen in its post-independence period. I was tasked with the responsibility of documenting the concerns of Nevis and to document therefore the approach that we would take if we were successful at the polls. And before a crowd of thousands on the courthouse steps, I believe it was December 14th in the year of our Lord 2014, we would have signed what the historians will record as the Charlestown Accord. And that accord set out the blueprint. It said to our people, if we were successful, this is what the people of Nevis could expect from a unity government. Well, as Jehovah God in his wisdom would have it, we were successful. Our people voted for team unity, and in 2015 at that general election, we had the PLP securing one seat. The Honorable Sam Conda, who had left the security of the Labour Party and thrown his lot in with Timothy Harris, was the man who ultimately was not successful in number 3 in St. Kitts. Timothy Harris was successful in number 7. Sean Richards was successful in number 5. Lindsey Grant was successful in number 4. Eugene Hamilton was successful in number 8. Ian Patches-Liebert was successful in number 1. Vance Amory was successful in number 10. And yours truly, I was successful in number 9. The Honorable Alexis Jeffers, who also ran, was unsuccessful in number 11. The Honorable John L. Powell was unsuccessful in number 2. I believe at the time, can't remember the name of the gentleman, but he was unsuccessful against Dr. Douglas in number 6. And certainly that is how the seats came. Congress Maynard would have been successful in number 3. And so we had a configuration then under the Team Unity umbrella of 1 PLP seat, 4 PAM seats, 2 CCM seats. In the context of our seat count, or constituency count of 11, it means therefore that Team Unity won a majority. Some pundits may well have looked on and said, listen, this is politics. In politics, agreements are made, agreements are broken. But we said no. We had promised our people a new paradigm. We had promised our people a new approach. It was a principled approach. It was an approach which spoke about putting our country above ourselves, changing the perspective of our electorate and our people in terms of how they viewed politics and politicians, that we wanted to restore honor, integrity to our body politic. And so notwithstanding that we all knew that we could have formed a government in 2015 without Timothy Harris, we not only included Dr. Harris and the PLP, but we honored our commitment and made him the Prime Minister. I want you to reflect on that, ladies and gentlemen, for a moment. That in 2015, of 7 seats forming the government, Dr. Harris and the PLP had 1. And the rest of us honored our commitment because we said this is what we had said to our people. And we coalesced 6 in support of 1. And he became the Prime Minister. And so we started this journey. For my part, I confess that I observed from fairly early that there were some troubling signs. Notwithstanding, as we all would do in any relationship, that we had worked so hard to put together, we wanted to see it work. And I myself expressed to the Prime Minister time and time again what my concerns were. There were various retreats, I recall, one at the Park Hyatt, for example, when we had full and frank discussions about difficulties. There were various one-on-one engagements when discussions were had. There were various cabinet engagements when discussions were had. And we had this ongoing dialogue about how we can improve. I recall that I would have met one-on-one with the Honorable Gentleman Timothy Harris at the Four Seasons Resort. I recall I would have met one-on-one with him over breakfast at the Park Hyatt. I would have had lunch with him, I recall, at a place called Rock Lobster in St. Kitts. All of these were engagements which sought to resolve issues. And those issues, ladies and gentlemen, were never resolved. Instead, I believe that Dr. Harris saw the prime ministership as his moment, not to serve the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, but to serve himself, his family, and those close to him. And I say that not because I begrudge anybody anything. Those who know me know that through the grace of God, when I entered politics, I entered with what I have. I have made nothing from politics. I have not grown wealthy. I have not acquired any material possessions from my time in politics. My car, my house, whatever I would have had through the grace of God before politics. And so I don't begrudge people anything. For me, my life in politics is truly to serve others and to help others to grow. And I have said that my own journey in relation to this thing called politics came about in an unexpected way. The Honorable Vance Amory would have come to my home, he and his wife, and sought to persuade my wife and I that this was a path that I should take. I had not at the time had any serious inclination towards politics. I have said publicly more than once that my goal was to become Queen's Counsel and hopefully spend some time on the bench as a judge. That was my life's path. Vance Amory, in his wisdom, came to my home in Montpellier and persuaded me to do otherwise, saying that he wanted a successor. He wanted to build the CCM party. And I know he came not only to me, but he also went to the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, and both of us would have come into the party as young men at the time. And I say that that was my journey because prior to that I was on a particular path as a lawyer. Did work here, there, and everywhere, all around the world. And I had a good career. And I decided to put that to one side and to seek to serve the people of Nevis and ultimately the wider federation. Why, might some ask, would you give up all that you could earn and your life's ambition to be a Queen's Counsel and to be a judge in order to get into politics? And I'll answer you simply and truthfully this way. That having grown up and come out of the depths of poverty in Handley's Road, a little place called Scarborough, that I had got to a place in my life where I was because others had helped me. There is nobody in this world who has achieved anything who has done it on their own. And sometimes I get emotional because I reflect on the mornings when we didn't have money to pay a bus, so I had to walk for 2 miles from Brown Hill to the Charlestown Secondary School. And my neighbors sometimes, and I pray that they don't get upset with me if I call their name, but Mr. Elmo Liebert and his wife, now our beloved Deputy Governor General, Hyleta Liebert, her honor, Mrs. Christine Springett, who was the principal at the Charlestown Secondary School. Sometimes as we were walking, my siblings and I, and the rain started to come and they were passing, they would stop and give us a lift. Those acts of kindness. When I went to school initially in Gingerland, at what we used to call Chapel School, that's how I remember it, it was at the back of the Methodist Church. And then at the now Joyce and Liebert Primary School, then the Gingerland Primary School, where I went to grade 4. And then my family moved from Handley's Road to Brown Hill, and I went to what was then Prospect Primary, now Ivor Walters Primary. At every step, there were teachers, There were people who took an interest in me, who contributed, who gave me that extra little lesson, who helped me along the way. And it has shaped my own approach that helping others to succeed is the best form of living. And so when I was given the opportunity not to come into government, because when Vance Amory approached me, I told him I would consider, and then shortly after the CCM lost office. And when I made my decision to enter politics, I entered in opposition, as did Alexis Jeffers. We did not come in to a government and therefore had any office or perks or contracts. No, we came in opposition. And as some have described it, the cold, hard winter of opposition. That was my entry. But my entry was never about me. It was always about an understanding that others had helped me, and I therefore had an obligation to help others. That is the only way, brothers and sisters, that we will develop. If, as some refer to it, we pay it on, we pay it forward. We ensure that those who have helped us, we help someone else, and those that we help someone else. That is why I'm here. I could be anywhere and could be doing many things, but I have decided that my place is the island of Nevis, an island that I love, a place that I love, where my navel string is buried, and a place where I hope God grants me long life, and that I may never leave until He calls me home. Nevis is where I want to be. Nevis is where I have decided to be. Nevis is where I want to make my contribution. However much or however little, I want to do it here. And so I take us back now to the narrative concerning Team Unity. And I say to you that there was a troubling type of trait that I, for my own part, ascertained in Timothy Harris. As the years went by and as he became more comfortable in his role as Prime Minister, more secure perhaps in his role as Prime Minister, I started to see more of I and more of me. Less of us and less of we. And so every achievement was Timothy Harris. We had a problem with crime in this country. Everybody knows that. We, the cabinet, sat, discussed, took advice, and came up with a peace program. A program which was designed to redirect our youth from a path of crime and criminality to a path of contributing and becoming responsible members of our society. That was a cabinet decision from a cabinet discussion. But lo and behold, I can now hear Timothy Harris did it. We put together social programs, particularly during the pandemic that beset us in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic. The Poverty Alleviation Program, PAP. The Income Substitution Program, where for a few months we gave people $1,000 using funds from the Severance Fund held by Social Security. All of these programs, relief to our consumers, were designed in the cabinet. Yet we are to hear one man. And I realize that these characteristics, these traits weren't helpful if we were to fulfill what we say and said to our people we were intending to fulfill. And so I made no bones about it that in 2020, when the election time came around again, and I at that time had become leader of the Concerned Citizens Movement, going back to 2017, when the Honorable Vance Amory decided that he was out of elective and active politics, and I assumed the leadership of CCM. I took the CCM into its first federal election under my watch in 2020. And the people of Nevis rewarded us handsomely for our management of Nevis, our steadfastness, and what we had been able to do, and gave us all 3 seats for the very first time in our history. The Honorable Eric Evelyn, the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, and myself became 3 elected candidates at the federal level for the first time in the history of the Concerned Citizens Movement. People's Action Movement were able to again secure 4 seats on St. Kitts, and this time around the PLP secured 2 seats. And so we had 4 plus 3 plus 2, 9 seats out of 11, again to form a government. I say tonight that I made my concerns known to my colleagues, that I had seen some troubling traits, and I thought that it would be a mistake if we were to reconstitute the government with the same leadership. My colleagues did not agree, and so they decided that they would again entrust the prime ministership of the country to Dr. Timothy Harris. And we therefore said, well, if that is the case, then let us again continue to try to see whether or not perhaps what I had perceived as some unfortunate traits, that maybe I was wrong. And what were those traits? I described some. Decisions that were taken and then brought to the cabinet, if at all, to be rubber stamped. Sometimes submissions for the cabinet from ministries were held in abeyance for months, but some developer only had to have a word with the Prime Minister and their submission was brought to the fore and came within a matter of days. Things were happening, deals were being made, transactions being entered into. And many of us in the cabinet were none the wiser. I took an oath, and so I will not get into the details of cabinet business. But I do remember on one occasion when we had instituted the Sustainable Growth Fund. Forgive me, please, no. It was the Hurricane Relief Fund, immediately after the hurricanes of 2017, in the CBI program. And we were told that the fund was doing extremely well. And I recall distinctly when one member of cabinet asked, what does that mean? What are the numbers? And the technocrat said, I plead the 5th. I plead the 5th. To a question as to how well and what the numbers were for a government program. And then that technocrat, I recall, turned to the Prime Minister and said, only the Prime Minister can tell you that. And his response was, the program is doing very well. We were in a cabinet where we could not even get information as to government programs. The peace program that we had all supported in its conception. We understood much later that the monies for the peace program were being taken from the government, being sent to the development bank and being administered by and through the development bank. No accountability. When we ask, what is this? How many people are on this program? How is the program working? How many citizenships are being applied for? How many are being granted? What is the revenue? What is being generated? No response. No response. And so we moved on in that way, raising these issues in the confines of the cabinet, raising these issues in the confines of private meetings, saying this is not unity. This is not what we promised each other and the people. These grand announcements, I will use an example, something that has stayed with me. The Honorable Lindsey Grant, who I believe is the best Minister of Tourism the Caribbean has seen in a very long time. Notice I didn't say St. Kitts and Nevis. The Caribbean has seen in a very long time. He has a knack for it. He has done well. And Lindsey used to call me on a Sunday because cabinet is Monday. And he would call me on a Sunday and say, Mark, I'm asking you to support me because I'm bringing something tomorrow. This was in the height of the COVID pandemic. Lindsay was fighting tooth and nail. I could remember the passion that he came to that cabinet with, talking about the hair braiders, talking about the guys with the monkeys down at Port Zante, talking about the taxi drivers. Let me tell you, you have no better friend than Lindsey Grant, because he campaigned tirelessly for you in the cabinet, asking for us to amend the protocols to allow the cruise ships to come back so that those people could eat bread. And he would call me on a Sunday and say, Mark, I beg you support me on this tomorrow. And time again the task force said, no, we're not yet ready. We have this to do. We have that to do. And I agree. I accept the task force did their best in difficult circumstances. And Lindsay never gave up. He came back again and he came back again. And finally, the task force agreed some protocols that allowed the first cruise ship to come. If my memory serves, that first ship was a small ship, and it docked at Carambola and the Southeast Peninsula. Imagine then my consternation and my amazement that the ship did not even enter St. Kitts Nevis waters properly. Then a big poster came out with an image of the Prime Minister, giving him the credit for crews coming back to St. Kitts and Nevis. I saw Eugene Hamilton, who I now hear as the Deputy Prime Minister. I will get to that later. Eugene Hamilton, in the first dispensation, couldn't even hire, in his words, a maid at the JNF hospital, because while he was purportedly Minister of Health, an unelected individual was given more power than him. And his hands were tied to the point where staunch supporters of his could not even get employed as a maid, in his words, at the JNF. And he was an elected representative. He had the all-important Ministry of Housing in St. Kitts, what they call it down there, NHC. And if you don't believe me, go back in your archives, because not one house could be handed out in St. Kitts unless Timothy Harris was there to do the handing. It's not his ministry. It is Eugene Hamilton. And yet Eugene could not make a move, could not get a headline that he had delivered a home unless Timothy Harris was there. Commissioning of streetlights, something so pedestrian and simple. Timothy Harris has to flick the switch. No matter what it was. And I realized that there was this, how should I call it? This insatiable need for attention. This incredibly low self-esteem. That if there was anyone else in the room with some light, that person became a threat and an enemy. Notwithstanding that we're all supposed to be working together. I recount an incident. It was in 2015 when we had just won. And we went up to the United Nations. I was then the newly minted Minister of Foreign Affairs. And I recall it as is our custom. When we are in a city like New York, we try to engage with our people. And there was a town hall meeting arranged. I recall it was in the Bronx at, if memory serves, the Episcopalian Church. And I recall it was downstairs. And when we got there, the Prime Minister, who has the benefit of Secret Service when he travels, he had arrived prior to me. And when I arrived and I entered the hall, which was downstairs in the basement, there was an eruption Sheriff, and people were screaming and shouting, receiving me so warmly. And I said to myself, it must be that this is a Nevision crowd, that these are people from Nevis. And as I walked through the crowd and was warmly greeted and hugged and kissed and handshook and patted on the back and called the sheriff, which was, of course, a moniker that had been assigned to me in this politics, I soon realized that I knew none of the people. And it wasn't until I got almost to the back of the hall that I encountered a pocket of Nevisians, some of whom were my family members. And two people that night, one, my aunt, two, a Kittitian lady friend, both mature people, echoed the same sentiments to me that night. They said to me, the Prime Minister is not happy with the reception you received when you entered the hall. And I brushed both of them off. I said, what nonsense are you saying? We are all in the team together. And I remember one of them saying to me, son, I have lived a while. I looked at him. He was not happy with the reception that you received. I was not concerned with those things. Because if we walk into the room and I get applause and he gets applause and everybody gets applause, what is the issue? But these were the troubling traits that I'm talking about. It has to be about me. I have to get all the credit for the good that's done. So the peace program that all of us support and continue to support, that was me. I did it. Cruise ships come back, that's me. You get a house, that's me. You on the pop, that's me. You get $1,000 during the pandemic, that's me. Me. Well, where's the team in that? And we slowly started to see that happening. 2017, the hurricanes hit. I was part of the delegation to go to the United Nations. I traveled. And when I was already in New York, I learned that the Prime Minister decided that he would not travel. Every year, there is a country statement read at the United Nations, the biggest stage in the world. Naturally, it is either read by the head of state or by the foreign minister. In fact, some countries in the Caribbean alternate. The head of state goes one year, the foreign minister goes the next. It's diplomacy, it is how it works. And so I went up and I was in New York, attending the meetings and doing all that is required of me to do my job in a professional way. And as the time drew nigh for the country statement to be made in the hallowed halls of the General Assembly at the United Nations, I got word that the Prime Minister did not wish me as the Foreign Minister to read the statement, but that the then Ambassador Sam Kanda should read the statement. And I said, no, I am the Foreign Minister, and in the absence of the Prime Minister, I will read the statement. And I did. The statement was well received. Commendations followed, not for me, because I am a mere representative of St. Kitts and Nevis. But again, I was to learn that that created a problem. And so, thereafter, the Prime Minister ensured, even up to the last UN General Assembly, that I was in New York, but because the option was given for the statement to be done via Zoom, he stayed in Basti and did the statement. Not a soul, listen. The hall was empty. I believe it was a Friday night or Saturday night, and nobody listened. Because the intention behind it is wrong. It's not about serving the country. It's about somehow trying to say, oh, Mark Brantley star is shining, let me try and diminish it. But my star shining means that Unity star is shining. Lindsey Grant, John L. Powell, Alexis Jeffers, Eric Evelyn, Sean Richards, whoever. Star is shining means that unity is shining. But when you're all concerned about you, me, there is no room in that type of character to acknowledge the contribution of anybody else. In fact, you start to fight against your own people. And these were the traits that I saw and I was disturbed about. I believe that the country knows, and now I've been fired, I can speak freely, that I was appointed foreign minister in 2015 and again in 2020, and I had responsibility for OECS, CARICOM, United Nations, OAS, etc. The Honorable Prime Minister made it a point of excluding me from anything to do with the OECS and CARICOM. To the point where, at the last CARICOM intersessional in Belize, when he and his delegation are due to travel on the Saturday, on the Wednesday my office was advised by his office that his delegation to Belize for CARICOM intersessional would be he, Vance Emery of blessed memory, Sidney Osborne, a young man called Berridge, and a security officer. Nobody from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and certainly not the Minister of Foreign Affairs. No discussion with me, no consultation with me. I have colleagues calling me saying, when are you going to be arriving in Belize? I have to tell them, unfortunately, I didn't make the team. The Foreign Minister with responsibility for CARICOM, I did not make the team. Because again, I had attended a few meetings, and the camaraderie that I have with other foreign ministers and even with heads, some of whom I have known long before politics, like Mia Motley, for example. When I was at university, I used to be at Mia Motley and her parents' house, Ku Inor, it was called, in Sandy Lane. Her sister, younger sister, is to this day a friend of mine. So I know people, but that was a problem. Because how dare you come to a heads meeting and me hug you up and kiss you and say, Mark, what go on? How dare you? How dare you see Ralph and Ralph wrap your arms around you and call you comrade? How dare Keith Mitchell come up and talk to you? That shouldn't happen. That was this thinking. And so this trip to Belize occurred. I was not aware that the Honorable Vance Emery was ill. And so when I heard that that was the delegation, I said, well, more of the same. At the last moment, Timothy Harris pulled out of the delegation and said Vance should lead the delegation. I believe that was the 3rd of March. And Vance went off to Belize, led the delegation. The rest, as we know now, is tragic and history. And you ask the question, why? Why? Is it that the foreign minister was incompetent and incapable? No, to the contrary, the foreign minister was too competent and too capable. And when he stood up to speak, people listened. When he represented St. Kitts and Nevis, he did so well. And when you're doing well, you think that the person leading you would say, bravo, well done. But no, the person vexed with you. Blue vexed with you because they feel that you are getting somehow applause that they and they alone should get. I use one last example. We went up to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in London. I want to believe that this was somewhere around 2018 or thereabouts. Maybe wrong. So forgive me. And when we went, my wife accompanied me. I recall that the Prime Minister had gone on some CBI trip. And he was coming in from Hong Kong to London. I was coming in from the Caribbean. He therefore got to London, I am advised, around 5, 6 in the morning. I did not get to the hotel until about 11 a.m. And naturally, you've done a long transatlantic flight, you're tired. We were taken to some rooms that they said were temporary as they got our accommodation ready at the hotel. And our very hard-working, incredible diplomat, His Excellency Dr. Kevin Isaac, our High Commissioner in London, came to my door and he said, this Windrush issue, and for those who do not know, the MV Windrush was a boat that took immigrants from the Caribbean, started out from Jamaica to the UK. After World War II, that marked the exodus of Caribbean people to the United Kingdom to help rebuild the United Kingdom after World War II. At a time when we were all colonies. And so those people became known as the Windrush generation. And got that, of course, from the MV Windrush, which was the first boat that went. Many from here, my father being among them, went up in that era. And many stayed and went to places like Leeds and Manchester in order to make their contribution and to rebuild the United Kingdom, Birmingham and elsewhere. What had happened is, through various policies of the British government, those same people who had come were now being treated and being characterized as illegal immigrants and were being deported, detained and deported. Many of them now elderly and being sent back to the Caribbean, saying they had no right to remain in the United Kingdom. I believe when the history is written, it will remember favorably the contribution of our High Commissioner, Dr. Kevin Isaac, and the High Commissioner from Barbados, my good friend Guy Hewitt, who were the two High Commissioners that led the charge against the British government in relation to their treatment of the Windrush generation. When I got to London, the eyes of the world were on United Kingdom because the Commonwealth heads of government there. And Kevin knocked on my door and he said, Foreign Minister, the Prime Minister is going to go on air shortly on the BBC, a radio program, to talk about the Windrush issue. I was tired, and so I said, thank you for letting me know. Closed my door, decided I would try and get a little rest. 5 minutes later, he came back, bang, bang, bang on the door. I opened the door. He said, we have a problem. What is the problem? The Prime Minister says that he's tired and you should do the interview. I confess that I had not been briefed. But perhaps because Von Radio has allowed me to be here all these years, I said, well, this is radio and it's on the phone. I should be able to do an interview on the phone for a few minutes with the BBC. And so I remember the brief was a couple of pages. And as I'm on the phone, because by the time he came to my door, the BBC was already on the line. And as I'm on the phone, live radio, I am slowly looking through, well, maybe not so slowly, but going through the brief and reading quickly and speaking. And when I hung up, the High Commissioner said to me, well, it looked as if you knew the information all along. Because I was able to represent the issue and give the responses necessary. Apparently, there were others who were listening. And it wasn't long after that the High Commissioner said to me that Channel 4 News wanted to do a television interview with me on the same issue. I said, well, this thing getting serious now, so I believe that is where the Prime Minister now needs to come in. The Prime Minister's response was, you already start dealing with the thing, man, go ahead, deal with it. And so, I went on Channel 4 News. It went very well. I was on there with one of the Windrush victims. BBC then called me for a major program that they had. I can't remember, Hard Talk or something like that. And I went on that. That program went global. People were contacting me all from Africa, telling me how proud they were of how I represented St. Kitts and Nevis, the wider region, and the world on this Windrush issue. That led to an appearance on CNN, an appearance on BBC Scotland, and an appearance on Russia Today. I was going around from studio to studio making the case for the Windrush generation. When we had first gone to London, the then Prime Minister, I think it was Theresa May, had said that she would not meet with Caribbean leaders on the issue of Windrush. By the time we were done, the pressure was such that she did a 180 and agreed to meet at number 10. And so I accompanied the Prime Minister to number 10, For the first time in my life, I went to number 10. It was on that issue. Again, I thought I was contributing. Then I got a call. Somebody said, boy, you're all over the radio and TV down here and whatnot. Be careful. I said, be careful of what? The man not happy. He said, you up there acting like you're the head of delegation. I said, that is impossible. Is he who asks me to do it? So if you ask me to do something, and I do it to the best of my ability, and we get results, why would you then turn around and tell anybody that I up here acting like I'm the head of delegation? But again, the insecurity. Nobody else can shine, because if anybody else shine, it make him somehow feel like he's not in charge. You hear what I tell you? I was not even to be involved in that. He said he tired, and so I end up giving the radio interview. When the TV now, I said this is getting serious now, this gone to TV. So, of course at the time, I did not know anything about this Peter Verdi shoes and watch issue. So all along I was saying, well, the man just tired, or the man somehow camera shy. I didn't know he was trying to avoid the spotlight. But that had nothing to do with me, because any watch I have I buy, and any shoes I have I also buy. Me never beg nobody for no watch and shoes in my life. So I put that to one side. But I didn't understand that that was the situation at the time. But rather than saying, well, yes, I asked him to deal with the matter, instead I was being criticized that I am acting as if I'm head of delegation. I use all of those examples. I've never talked about these things before, But I'm talking now because this is the talking season. To say that these were some of the issues. And then, of course, the issue of Nevis. And getting its share of what rightfully belongs to her. Not to me. Because whoever is in the chair of Premier is going to have to grapple with the same issue. But rightfully belongs to Nevis. So here's what happened. We got into government in 2015 with all the promise of team unity. Vance Amory was the leader of Nevis. Vance Amory was the one who signed the Charleston Accord. And when we got into government, I did not know that Vance Amory apparently agreed that he would take $2 million per month, and that would be treated as a share to Nevis of the CBI receipts. He was the Premier. That was his prerogative. But I was not aware as the Deputy Premier and as his colleague in the federal cabinet. I did, however, know that Nevis was getting $2 million, and I was told it was an interim arrangement while we work out the mathematics. I said, okay, cool. That $2 million continued. When I became Premier in 2017, December it was, I said to the Prime Minister, I said, Prime Minister, with all due respect, $2 million a month from a program that is bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars, reputedly, because at the time you weren't getting any reports in cabinet to say these are the figures. I said that is not good enough. And so the money moved from 2 million to 3.75 million. And it has remained there for all the years since. I have a file that I'm sure at some point will be shared with the public. Because my training as a lawyer always said to me, document things. Prime Minister never liked you to write to him. He always used to remonstrate and say, man, pick up the phone and call me. Oh, you like to write things, call me. But I then realized that the character is such that it was better to document things. And so I would write and say, this is my concern and whatever. And he would respond. There's a series of correspondence on this issue. People say, why you weren't talking about the fair share and the whatever? And I'm saying that I was doing my job discussing it internally. It wasn't a matter in my view that was in the public domain, because anticipating that there are people of goodwill, you expect that these matters will be worked out. And so I wrote asking, what's happening with this money for Nevis? And demanding 3.75 million as an interim payment per month while we work out the maths. I realized that another year go by, the maths not working out. I write again. Here are the responses from the PM. 1. This is a matter that requires some study, and I've asked the Ministry of Finance in St. Kitts to look at the matter. Fair enough. I said, okay, I understand, sir. No movement. I write again after another 6, 8, 9 months. What's happening with this? Dear Premier, I'm happy to report that the finance people are almost finished with what they're doing, and we'll have something to me shortly which I will share with you and with the cabinet. Okay, that sounds like progress. Another 6 months, 8 months go by, nothing. Well, Mr. PM, what's happening? Oh, I feel that I'm going to have to put a committee in place to deal with this matter. Mine, you just get a letter before that couple months ago, said the report almost finished. Now you got a committee in place to deal with the matter. No committee ever formed. So I go back again. Mr. PM, listen man, this thing getting out of hand. What's going on with this situation? Oh, I'm going to bring in the World Bank to do the maths for us, because we can't count in St. Nevis. You get to a point where you understand that somebody trying to fool you. Because if you move from finance looking at the matter to finance almost complete their analysis, and I got the letters, so anybody want to challenge me, I will bring them. To third, you're going to put a committee in place. To four, it now has to go to the World Bank. And then the World Bank, COVID and people can't travel and this, that, Tara. And I'm saying, why you don't get a accounting student from the Nevis 6th form? Come down and say, okay, partner, how much money CBI brought in? How much did we pay to agents and promotion and all that, and pay staff and whatnot? How much left? From what is left, Nevis get 25%, Singers get 75%. You see how easy that is? Because that was the agreement. That is what is in black and white in the Charleston Accord. It is the same Charleston Accord that catapulted Timothy Harris into the chair as Prime Minister. So after you see a man give you this kind of response once, twice, thrice, 4 times, what am I supposed to do? I come from Henley Part, and Henley Part no got no kunomono down there. There's no kunomono from Henley Part. I moved to Brownhill, and worse in Brownhill. Careful in Brownhill. Brownhill people not stupid. No kunomono in Brownhill. So how I going to go sink his basti and become kunomono down there? I said no. It gets to a point where this is no longer acceptable. And then when this thing came to a head, it was last year. We're struggling in Nevis. I'm getting the same $3.75 million a month. I'm having to pay salaries of almost $9 million a month. 8+ million. With 4 Seasons closed. Nisbet closed. Airports closed. Businesses closed. And I'm saying to myself, I cannot disappoint the pensioners, the NE workers, the public servants in Nevis. And I'm still fighting to provide some relief in terms of individuals, electricity, water, trying to stimulate agriculture and food security, granting tax waivers. So the government has no money coming in. I am forced to borrow in the name of the people of Nevis to keep Nevis afloat. I say it because it's the truth. And then I am to find out, I believe the budget was read on the 14th of December, the federal budget. On the 13th, which in memory serves, was a Monday, a cabinet day. We are all sitting in the cabinet, and the financial secretary in St. Kitts comes to the cabinet with the Prime Minister and says, I am pleased to report that we have a surplus. Well, if I wasn't on radio, I would have said what went through my head. It is not appropriate language for on radio where only the best will do. I say surplus. All year you hear how bad things are. How come the day before the budget you have a surplus? And they then said, oh, we want to pay a double salary. What are we going to do? You got to do something for the people, etc. And I remember Sean Richards making the point that as members of cabinet, we should not be told the day before that there's a surplus, because we should have been getting information regularly so we knew what was going on. But I asked myself the question, I said, well, how the country could have a surplus when Marriott, Park, Hyatt and them been shut down, no cruise? Where did surplus come from? Banana and potato? Where did surplus come from? And that caused me now to make my own investigation. Because I said nothing come to the cabinet. When I made my investigation, I realized that the Citizenship by Investment program in 2021 brought in to Bastille $588 million. $588 million, of which the island of Nevis get the same 3.75 a month, or $45 million for the year. Nothing on, nothing off. So that means that of 588 million, Nevis get 45 and St. Kitts kept $543 million down there for itself. Now in the eyes of God and man, how could that be right? And I am sitting down in a cabinet, Alexis is sitting down in a cabinet, Eric is sitting down in a cabinet supporting a man who's sitting as Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, who does not see the people of Nevis as being part of the country. So we must suck salt up here while you down there declaring bonus and double salary, buying back land and banking hundreds of millions of dollars. He said, no, that can't be right. Under the Charleston Accord, on the basis of what was committed to the island of Nevis, in 2021, Nevis should have got somewhere in the region of $150 million. We got 45. And then the audacity to stand up and say, oh, I'm taking care of Nevis, look how much money Nevis getting, Nevis never used to get. Look how much money them I get now, what am I make nice for? As if a favor is being done to us over here, who are equal citizens in this country. And I met with Alexis and I met with Eric and we said, hell no, that will not do. And I said to him, wrote to him, listen, you keep saying that you have Tutmun Samanbagay looking at this issue. This issue been looked at since 2015. It's been 7 years now we're looking at. I want 5.5 million a month until June, and then by June this issue has to be finalized. I'm not going any further than that. And I gave an ultimatum. He write back again, he looking at it. I tell him this is my position. Then the day before the PAM convention, I get a letter delivered to me by a police officer, come all the way from St. Kitts, on the boat, with a letter for me to say that he agreed. The day before the PAM convention, I wrote to him, I believe it was in January, the PAM convention was in March. He agreed to pay the money because he was concerned about what might be said at the PAM convention. Well, again, people who know me know that I deal with principle. And so I said what I had to say, and which was the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth at the PAM convention. And that was the first time that matters came to light in a very public way. I don't resile from it because I know the efforts that I would have made internally to resolve these issues, to get us back on a path of unity. I know what the issues were. I know the efforts that had been made quietly. Nobody ever hear me go out and make no noise yet. Timothy Harris time and time again tried to insult me and diminish me. He came over to Nevis, went over, had a meeting with the fire officers, unbeknown to me, tell them he give some $1 million and he come to see that the money is not being squandered. A measly $1 million when the police station in Newcastle cost 6 point something, we had to go to the bank to borrow for a national security installation. He came up, he had a big meeting at Four Seasons with the Four Seasons workers to discuss their severance. I was in the Nevis cabinet, it was a Wednesday morning, having cabinet on my phone going crazy. People say, well, Mr. Brantley, you're the premier, where are you? I was not told a thing about the meeting. Time and time again he did these things to try and belittle and try to embarrass. I never came to the public with any noise. I went to him privately, PM, this is not good enough. PM, this is not helpful. He had his goons attacking me on social media day after day. They get so bold, they use their own names. I go to him about it. Nothing changes. And I keep saying to him, well, if your people are so bold to attack the leader of CCM, who's sitting in the cabinet with you with 3 colleagues, with 2 colleagues, I'm sorry, from Nevis, well, that says that it's sending a message to the public that there's no unity. Oh, he not see it like that. Did nothing. People paid by his office attack the Honorable Alexis Jeffers mercilessly every day. We say, how could that be right? No, nothing is wrong with that. These are issues that we raised and continue to raise internally until everything now came to light at the PAM convention. And then he would have had his own convention, and it was clear to the world that all was not well. Now, what would I have done if I'm the leader? My first order of business was to say, fellas, no man, this thing ain't looking so good. Let me sit down. Let us sit down and see how we can fix this thing. But he didn't do that. In fact, having brought some woman from Trinidad to go on the platform at the PLP convention in 2021, who announced that he was some special person. The only thing she didn't call him was Jesus, and that he should continue forever as Prime Minister because he was rare, an unusual man who had so much quality to him that, notwithstanding the agreement, fundamental principle of unity, that Douglas had been there too long and therefore we could only have 2 terms, that shouldn't apply anymore. Sean responded strongly to it, and I understood. I was never in the whole mix about Prime Minister, so that was not my issue. My issue has been, is, and will always be the people of Nevis getting what they should get. But Sean was concerned about it, understandably, because Sean naturally felt that he should be next in line, and he had stuck with the agreement. So one would have thought after the PAM convention of 2022, the PLP convention, when it was clear that everybody was sort of in campaign mode and the situation was looking grim, that the leader would have said, fellas, come, let me calmly sit down and hear him. No! It took Sean and I to write a letter to him to ask him for a meeting. And he took 9 days before we could have that meeting. When we had that meeting, we set out what our concerns were. And he said he needed time to consider. Following 8 days after that, Holy Thursday, he came back, gave no answers to anything. Bunch of talk about framework, and we want to develop some framework to discuss, and some discussions, and some committee, and some framework. He loved the word framework. And we said, that's not good enough. So we went away. And then we say, you know what, let us document to him what the concerns are and give him a time, tell him we want a response by some time. And I don't think, listen, we are big people. Timothy Harris was trying to buy time. You know why? Timothy Harris had no intentions of abiding by the principles of team unity. Timothy Harris wanted time so he could get his candidates in place. That's all. He could get his candidates in place. He wanted time. And so he kept trying to kick us down the road. Kick the ball down the road. So when we wrote to him, he sent back an 18-page epistle. Not a thing in there makes sense. Because us say we don't understand government, we don't understand the constitution, we don't understand this, we don't understand that. Right? I hear some members of cabinet help him write it. Down on Coy, where they got the camp down in Coy. I mean, we know these things. We know these things. One of them made the comment, I can't use the language that she used because she has a mouth there that needs discipline. But she said, I give them some word in the in the 18-page letter. That's what she was going around telling people. No effort to say, well, listen, these are genuine concerns. Imagine we're going to say, you have an ambassador for St. Kitts Nevis to the UN. He's on state-owned radio, bashing members of the cabinet. That is unacceptable. He should be recalled. You have people on the payroll of the Prime Minister bashing members of Team Unity, including yours truly. That has to stop. You know what the man say? Them got freedom of expression. They're entitled to the same freedom of speech that anybody else is entitled to. Now, is that a response from a leader who wants to fix a problem? Those are low-hanging fruit. If that was me, I would make one call to New York Patches. Let me tell you something. You're mashing up the thing down here. Hush your tail part and stop chat chopping this pan radio. If you can't do that, bring your backside home. Forgive me. Van radio, please. See if you could expunge that word. That's un-radio-like. But that's what I would have done. You got people on your payroll bashing Zook, bashing me, bashing Sean. You can't pick up the phone and tell them this is unhelpful to Team Unity. This is sowing discord. No, they got freedom of expression. That was his response. And so, the result, ladies and gentlemen, is that we were unable to move forward. So we wrote to the GG. But before we wrote to the GG, we got advice. We took advice in the United Kingdom from a Queen's Counsel there. I don't mind disclosing his name, Sir Geoffrey Robertson QC, senior constitutional lawyer, who gave us advice and told us that the GG had the authority, on his advice, once he was satisfied that the person as Prime Minister no longer commanded a majority of elected members, that the GG could do what was necessary, because the GG had an ongoing obligation to be satisfied throughout the term that the person in the chair of Prime Minister always had the support of a majority of members. And so we wrote the letter. We were not surprised that the GG responded the way he responded. But we were not just waiting there, because when we wrote the letter, consistent with the legal advice we got, we also filed a motion of no confidence. And that was filed. And under the law, because we had changed the law to say it has to come within 21 days. Well, this is where now the cataflam start. The GG write and say, he not got no power. I go along with our business. 6 of us had no power to change the Prime Minister. It's okay, GG, no problem. We accept that. We move to the Parliament with a motion of confidence. 21 days now, the clock ticking. And it appeared that there was a feeling that they could persuade the Speaker not to bring the motion of no confidence to the House. I say they. I'm not going to get into who comprised the they. But in the fullness of time, the history will be told. But there was a conspiracy to prevent that motion coming to the Parliament. And I will say tonight that history will be kind to A. Michael Perkins, because as Speaker, he independently exercised his judgment and independently exercised his authority as Speaker and determined that the motion must come to the House. So all this cataflam we saw there yesterday, hasty statement and Parliament dissolved and Tutmun Samabagai fired and all of that, pure troopiness. That was merely a response to the Prime Minister having been told that the motion was to be debated in the National Parliament this coming Monday. You hear me? He was told that the motion of no confidence would be debated in the Parliament this coming Monday. In fact, I'm reliably informed that the notices were already prepared to go out. That those who needed to be informed were already informed that the Speaker was moving forward. And so all we saw happening yesterday was high drama theatre, but as Brownhill people would say, cataflam. Cataflam, worthy of a Culturama masquerade troupe. Clown troupe for Culturama. Because the rope had finally run out. And that is really what's going on. Now people say all that they want to say. And I understand we all have supporters, and supporters will support whoever they wish. That is the nature of a democracy. But I said to you tonight that if Timothy Harris had any desire to save Team Unity, he could have come to the table at any point in time and said, gentlemen, I understand your concerns. Gentlemen, let me seek to address these concerns, because the concerns were not immaterial. How you could be undermining your colleagues? How anything good happening in the government is you, even when you not got nothing to do with it, is you? How you could be out there seeking to undermine, disrespect, disparage? And how could you have all these secrets? Peace program, nobody know it work. CBI program, nobody know it work. Nobody know how much money. No details. And you are sitting in a cabinet, the highest decision-making body in the country. No information step. I remember John L. Powell asked to get some report on step. Oh, well, and they will come next week, and oh Lord, the man, something wrong, he's sick and he can't come. And months, I don't know if that report ever came. That is the nature of this thing, and we are saying this cannot work. The cabinet cannot be a rubber stamp for decisions taken elsewhere. Those are not my words. Those are Timothy Harris's words when he described Douglas and the problems he had with Douglas. It cannot be a rubber stamp for decisions taken elsewhere. I remember, that one of Timothy Harris's biggest concerns with Douglas is he said to us that you had people in the cabinet like Ricky Skerritt and Nigel Carty who nobody voted for, and they had too much power. That they were being given by Douglas the same power like elected members. Well, look at life now. Who voted for Wendy Phipps? Who voted for Juicy? How much power they have now? Somebody tell me Juicy is the new foreign minister of the country. If it wasn't so serious, I would bust out laughing. Huh? Who voted for them? Wendy is the new minister of tourism. If it wasn't so serious, I would laugh. Who voted for them? And so all the things that Harris criticized about Douglas, you know what they say is like Animal Farm. You remember there's a scene in Animal Farm? Lord, my literature teacher would be upset with me because I can't remember how the scene go precisely, but I remember that the concern about the animals was the humans. But then I think the pig name was Napoleon. And Napoleon became just like the humans, and when Boxer, it was, the horse, looked to the human, looked to Napoleon, they look the same. Well, if all the things you accuse Douglas of you're doing, well, what that makes you? Because if Douglas was the standard that we ought not to emulate, but you come now and you are engaged in the same activity. Non-elected people got too much power in the cabinet. Well, look at this now. Look how much power Juicy and Wendy have. Who vote for them? The answer, nobody. Who would ever vote for them? The answer, nobody. I don't even believe Juicy would vote for himself. So, where are we going? Cabinet has become a rubber stamp for decisions taken elsewhere. You said it of Douglas. What has happened now? And so what you saw yesterday was merely a response. You know, I likened it to a situation where when we were boys, sometimes you only have one bat and one ball and you want to play cricket. And everybody know in cricket, nobody want to field, you want to bat. And the fella go up because he own the bat. And he go up and he bat and he get out. He decide, he ain't satisfied, he take up his bat and he go home. The game mash up. Some other fellows who didn't have neither bat nor ball, but like to fight, they go and they stand up in the middle of the wicket and they say, stall the game. That's what we used to say. The game mash up. That's Timothy. Timothy said, if I am not going to have the power in this country that I crave, that I covet more than anything else, I'm going to mash up the whole country, I'm going to mash up unity, I'm going to mash it up. And that is the man. Don't take my word for it. Look at what has happened. Not once did he say to his colleagues, I recognize is an issue. Let us sit, let us discuss. Eric Evelyn, I believe since he was back in early February, voiced his concerns. And everybody knows Eric. Eric is a peacemaker. Humble fella. Peacemaker. Loving. Love everybody. Eric said, I have these concerns. We need a retreat. Since early February. No retreat ever happened. Timothy didn't want no retreat. Timothy want to be, as he said, undiminished in the office of Prime Minister, because as far as he's concerned, to compromise is to diminish the office. Well, you know what they say. Who want all sometimes get none at all. And so my closing statement after a very long soliloquy, taking an hour and a half tonight, is this. That the stone that the builder refused sometimes becomes the chief cornerstone. And I will remind Dr. Harris that he was fired by Denzel Douglas and he came back as Prime Minister. And so if our history holds true, those that were fired will come back and will be in government. And that is why, as far as I'm concerned, I have no tears to shed about what happened yesterday. What happened yesterday was farcical. It was as if one was watching Tom and Jerry cartoon series. And Timothy Harris has succeeded in making St. Kitts and Nevis the laughing stock of the region. I can't begin to tell you how many calls I got from all across the region, people asking me if there's no room in the asylum in St. Kitts and Nevis, because clearly the person they heard and what they're hearing from him can't make no sense. And I reflect that he has, I'm told, British advisors paying him £2 million, 8 million EC dollars, to advise him. And if that is the advice that they're giving him, I suggest to him he put them on the first BA flight and send them home. Because it was nonsensical, farcical, and asinine, the approach that was taken yesterday. Mr. Harris, I know you pay attention to these programs. Let me say to you this. It is we in Team Unity who took you up, dusted you off, and made something out of you when you had been discarded to the scrap heap of political history in this country. Don't damn the bridge you walk over. Don't damn the bridge you walk over, because oftentimes you will come to regret it. And this is not any threat or any promise. What I will say to you is that the people of number 9, St. John's and St. Paul's, have elected me since 2007 until now. For 15 years I've been their representative, and they keep electing me with larger numbers. Why? Because they know that I represent them, that I serve them, and that when I go out to work for them, not for me. And they're the ones who hired me in June of 2020, as they've hired me in 2015 and in 2010 and in 2007. Therefore means, with respect, you can't fire me because you never hire me. You can't fire me because you never hired me. And so, as I've said to the many who have offered me jobs since yesterday, say they want me to be Domino's pizza man, they want me to be the grill man. Somebody even said they want me to be a dancer at some exotic club. Different jobs available, they said to me. I have suggested to them, it's okay, because what happened yesterday is temporary, a mere blip, because the saints will once more go marching in. And when the saints go marching in, I can tell you there will be one who will not be in that number. And so we have here a situation of a great idea, team unity, still a great idea, still in my view the best idea for this country, but wrecked by the ambitions and the lust for power and the greed of one man who could not see that there was strength in compromise, strength in teamwork, strength in working together. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I leave it there. It is half an hour. I'll open the lines. I have much more to say in the event that nobody wants to talk. But if you want to talk, it's 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. Those are the numbers to call if you want to be a part of this show this evening. So I will end my soliloquy, lengthy as it has been, but I think it was important to say all that I've said and to go on the record and to be very clear as to what I say and what I mean. Let's go to the phones and take the calls. Hello?
Mark Brantley.
Good evening to you.
Good night. This is Carlton.
How are you, brother?
Fine. Yes, I am a spiritual man. Quite a large amount of people in the country doubt that. But I had something to eat, and I specifically sat down for 90 minutes to listen to you. And I want you to know this. Because of this speech that you made tonight, St. Kitts and Nevis has a bright hope for tomorrow if God allows us to see it. Mark, I want to be very brief because I got mission tomorrow, so I want to give as many people a chance. You warm me heart and you give me goosebumps all over my body tonight. And if I know you enough, there are many other things that you will be able to enlighten this country and prove to people that I am adamant, I am very determined that Timothy Harris will never see the government headquarters again as Prime Minister. I want to thank you for a magnificent performance tonight. No wonder the Holy Spirit has drawn to my attention that you is one of the best politicians ever walked St. Kitts and Nevis earth. Have a good evening, Mark, and I'll continue to listen.
Thank you very much, my brother. I really, really appreciate it, and thank you for your own contribution. I know that you are out there on radio, you are making your contribution as well, and that is what we are all seeking to do, to contribute and hopefully to make St. Kitts and Nevis a better place. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening, Mr. Sheriff.
How are you, my dear?
I am good. Presentation tonight is great.
Thank you.
To God be the glory, great things he has done. Isaiah 41 verse 10 and 11. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed. For I am the God, I will strengthen thee. Yea, I will thee with the right hand of my righteousness. Behold, all they that were incensed against thee shall be ashamed and confounded. They shall be as nothing, and they that strive with thee shall perish. May God continue to help you, help all of us. Good night, and you have a good night again. Good night.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the beautiful scripture as always. We're taking your calls, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Let's go back to the phone. Good evening, you're on the mark. Let's go back to the phone.
Good evening, Mark.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mark.
Good evening. Hi, can
Yeah,
you
hold on a
just
minute,
can you talk into the phone and listen to the phone, not to your computer, because it's delayed.
Oh, not to your computer, because it's delayed. Oh, not to your computer, because it's delayed.
Caller.
Okay, Mark.
Yes, could you move away from your computer and just speak into the phone?
Yes, I got it.
Okay.
I listened to you, and it is good that you have come to the people and explained exactly what went down. You know the voice. I was in conversation with people, and they felt, for some reason, you people took things into the public domain without giving Timo any recourse. Based on what you have said tonight, that is a falsehood. Not what you said, but the view that people got in the public domain.
Mm-hmm.
So I applaud you based on what you said, and you keep in touch with the people. I will continue to do my work.
Thank you, brother, and thank you for your own contribution, which has been tremendous over all these years. So thank you very much for your friendship, for your advice, and for your own contribution to St. Kitts and Nevis. It is 25 minutes to the hour of 10 o'clock. We're taking your calls. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Let's go back to the phone. Good evening, you're on the mark. Let's go back to the phone.
Caller?
Hello, good evening, Mark. How are you?
I'm well. Could you move away from your computer? So just listen to and talk to the phone.
I'm moving away.
All right, good.
Now, Mr. Mark, I always have the greatest respect for you and things like that, and you know that. But I just lay down here tonight and listen your conversation about your incident with the federal government.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Mark, during those time what you had, and when things were going bad, why you never come out earlier and say something? Not till you said nobody can fire you, which you was elected just by the people, but your portfolio was fired from you. You know, so I think with what you had went through, why you want to come back into another federal government? You could answer after you, because I'm leaving. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and thank you for the question. I was at pains tonight to explain that when you work so hard to put something together, you don't want it to fail. And I believe that Timothy Harris took advantage of that, because there were people like myself who were more committed to unity than he was. Always saying, listen, let us try internally to resolve issues. Always knocking on his door, Prime Minister, you did this, and this wasn't right, and this wasn't right, and trying to get a conversation. And it did not work. And so you get to a point where the pot boiling, you know. I recognize the voice. I remember you used to be a good cook. So you should know something, the pot boil over. But people shouldn't be preoccupied with why it took so long. It took so long because men of goodwill were seeking resolution internally. I don't really want to use the analogy of a marriage, but that's what comes to mind right now. If you and your wife have confusion, you don't come out and tell the neighbor and tell the village. You try to resolve it with your wife. You even go to a little counseling. You go and speak to the pastor. And it's only when things can't resolve that people start to say, boy, things look like something wrong. And my point is, long before I said anything in the public domain, the Prime Minister had his people attacking me relentlessly on social media every day. I went to him about it. I said, well, PM, how me and you could be sitting down in cabinet, sitting down at the table, clinking glass and say we are unity. But your closest people, campaign people, are in Nevis every weekend at the bars handing out money and saying vote for NRP. How could you be paying from your office somebody who has said that they will destroy Alexis Jeffers, your colleague in cabinet? How are those things right? That is long before I ever said anything publicly, caller. The point I'm trying to make is that Timothy Harris had every opportunity to change course, but he was not interested, because unity for Timothy Harris was merely a platform to get to where Timothy wanted to get. We picked him up and dusted him off. Had it not been for unity, had it not been for the same Sean Richards that he has no use for now, had it not been for the same Mark Brantley that he had the temerity yesterday to say he fired, where would he have been? Douglas had discarded him. We gave him a home. We picked him up from the dust heap, dust him off. Say, Lord Timo, come. Lord Timo, come. You know what they say? They had this saying, you know, old people are saying, sorry for Marga dog. And what happened? I don't mean to colloquialize it or to minimize it, but that is the reality. He was where he was prior to 2015, and we gave him the opportunity, the glorious opportunity to lead this country. Now imagine my surprise to hear him in a letter to us say that he is the reason why people win the seat. I say, well, my God, that is the arrogance. He is the reason why people win the seat. When he could only manage two, one then two. But he's the reason why other people win the seat. Because you see, for him, it has to be about him. He can't shake my hand and say, Mark, well done. Sean, well done. You all are making the team stronger. No. It has to be about him. And I listened, unfortunately, to something that was being played there, and Akila Nisbet was talking, and she said something about only PLP is helping the people. Only PLP, it has programs. And I said, PLP? PLP could form cabinet? PLP is 2 seat, 1-2. 1-2. Is PLP could give peace program? 2 seat could give a peace program? 2 seat could give PAP? 1-2 seat. It is the cabinet. And the cabinet comprises a majority of PAM and CCM. But they can't even bring themselves to say the cabinet. It is always me, I, and PLP. And so we will now see, because the matter is now in the hands of the people. And I have decided that this is now a political season. Yesterday I commented in jest that is the first time somebody has purported to fire me. And it was comical to me. Because every step thus far that Timothy Harris has taken has been predictable. And I'll tell you what happened. He never expected Sean and I to do what we did. Because all along, you see, he was accustomed to us coming to him privately. Timo, this isn't good enough. Timo, let us change that. That approach is not helpful. And he give you whatever cataflam he give you privately, and then he go out and he do the same thing again. And you come back to him. Well, how many chances you going to give? And so, now that the steps have been taken, yesterday was a boy taking up his bat and going home. Said the game mash up. Because he realized that he will not be allowed to bat any longer. That's all it is. Yesterday was a boy stalling the game, standing up in the middle of the pitch. And this country is not a game, you know. It's a serious business. And I always say that we live in serious times. We should be preoccupying ourselves now with our recovery post-COVID. We should be engaged as a country with seeing how we can move the country forward now, having lost 2 years to this dreaded disease. Instead of that, we have one man mashing up everything. One man decide, if I am not in charge, then I go mash up everything. And it gives a measure of that man. That is what is happening. And that is why I've been at pains to point out the sequence. The efforts that Sean made, the efforts that I made, the efforts we made together to say, let us resolve this. Even when things had come out in the public, we say, still, let us sit down and resolve this. Instead of that, this foolish woman will write the letter say, I give them some word in them. Lordy, to love a bus bad one. Let me go back to the phones and take some more calls. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Hey, Mark, good evening.
Good evening, brother.
Yeah, Mark, one observation. Can you promise the people of Nevis before you join the next unity again that everything being put into law, just like how Section 113 have gone into law and you could use it anytime?
What is it you want in law?
Hello?
What is it you want put into law?
No, the agreement, like how you guys signed your card, you get something that can go into law, into just like the Constitution, so that everybody can understand. Because you have people so they understand and they don't want to go along with the agreement. It's for things to go into law.
The colleague could have the law and they don't want to go along with the law either?
Yeah.
So what,
I understand.
I mean, at the end of the day,
observing that, and then
yes,
and then to me personally, for me, Timothy behaved just like Saddam Hussein. If he can rule, everything must go down the drain. And that's not right for a person entering elective politics.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, it's all about one man, and that is what I've said. That, what Timothy has demonstrated to us is that if he can't have it, he gonna mash it up. That is the reality. But I hear the argument about putting things in law, caller, and that is an argument, but the same way that the agreement was ignored, the law could be ignored. The Constitution has Section 110, which talks about revenue sharing. It has always been ignored for the whole time of our independence. That 110 has been ignored. So there's no guarantee. What guarantees us that we will get what is due to the people of Nevis is to have people of goodwill in government. Not people masquerading, but people who genuinely see the country as one country. Who genuinely say there's no difference between Basti and Charlestown, between Molyneux and Munster City. People who are genuinely interested in advancing the country and advancing all the people of the country. Not some who say, oh, Nevis, I look too much, or Nevis want more money for, what they going to do? Well, how come you don't say St. I look too much? I put a 3-man team together and they did an analysis. We had to go through all kind of nook and cranny to find some numbers. And when they don't work out the numbers, they say, listen, since 2007-2008 of CBI, Citizenship by Investment, is over $5 billion. A Guyanese friend of mine tell me don't say 5 billion, say 5,000 million. Because maybe people don't understand 5 billion. So $5,000 million came in. You know how much money that? Man, that's so much money you could walk on money from St. Paul's to Bastia. Bastia wash with cash, and out of that, Nevis get 327 million. Out of over $5 billion. Less than 7%. And you're saying to me that that requires World Bank? What the World Bank gonna come and tell you that you don't already know? What he gonna tell you that you don't already know? Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello? Hello? Okay, we've lost that caller. Let's go back to this line. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening, Mr. Mark Brantley.
Good evening to you.
I never see you in such fire in my life. But this is what happens when all of us get fired. It brings out the worst in us. Because you see, for several years, I've been pleading. I've been crying like you. But nobody was listening. The airport ID was pulled. Nobody was listening. We got fired from TDC, Mark. Nobody was listening. But now you got fired. You're feeling the pain. And I feel your pain. I understand when you went through with because you were getting the warning, you were getting the talking to. But you was not listening. Because you see, everybody was up in the glory. Everybody was up in the arms. And I keep telling you, Mark, the country, to look at Timothy's behavior. When Timothy told me some kind of, yeah, I should have said something. But again, but he sleep all out. But listening to you tonight, just look how I feel the pain. And I used to cry out about patches, cry out about so much thing. I was called a clown, you can't even go and see kids, one lot of foolishness. Now look at where we are today. Apparently, our country and our federation is in a good position, Mark. Is the world looking at us in a good light? Because this little black boy last year, as you used to say, was talking, was crying out for our country, was crying out for our kids' future, but nobody do want to listen. Tonight, I see Mark Brantley, and I could feel the pain, just like I was feeling the pain when the airport ID was put. I can tell you, the same pain when PDC take away the ID, and up to now, nobody, not one of you all come and address the TDC staff up until today. But listening to tonight, because you get fired. God in the midst of everything, Mark. And I'm going to say to you, my brother, I wish you all the best. I love people, brother, but I'm very passionate like you. Just like how you're arguing to me this morning. And I'm not getting involved in that. It's the same way I feel when my airport ID was pulled and you were TDC dealing with the workers in this country. You guys need to do something. Stand up on behalf of the people, Mark Brantley. I'll say to you again, it's nothing personal, but I'm passionate when I listen to you all tonight, my brother, and I could see it in your face. I could see the passion fighting for Nevis. You have a good night, and I hope you learn from tonight.
All right, well, thank you very much. I don't know what pain you're describing because I was just seeking to set out in a very clear and cogent and coherent manner for the people of Nevis and the wider Federation what has brought us to this point. If you are of a view that I'm feeling pain because the outgoing Prime Minister would have yesterday, in a final act of desperation, purported to fire nearly all the cabinet, then, my friend, it means you don't know me, because that has not caused me any pain at all. It is merely pointing out to the world how desperate Timothy Harris has become as he seeks to hold on to power at all cost. And that is all I have used it for, because many will not know, but I will say it now, that I cleaned out my desk 2 weeks ago. And you know what I was happy about 2 weeks ago when I cleaned up my desk? That after 7 years as foreign minister of this country, I left with a small plastic bag. I had in there 2 pairs of socks, a bottle of cologne, a bottle of hand lotion, and I believe some pay slips that were in an envelope, and I think one other thing. Oh, yes, a bottle of Eldorado 15 that I had bought and had in the office. Unopened, let me emphasize, lest people think I was drinking in the office. A little plastic bag. And I smiled as I walked out the office 2 weeks ago, because I said, this to my mind demonstrates that I didn't come in here and attach myself to anything in here. So I'm not feeling any pain, my friend, because of some temporary position that was announced yesterday. I am feeling pain that the country has been brought to this morass because of one man's unquenchable and insatiable appetite for power and greed. That is what I am concerned about. So don't get it twisted. In relation to your matter and the people at TDC, I have heard in the media that the TDC workers have been agitating. I confess to you that I am not aware of the details of that issue, but I believe everybody has a right to agitate for better circumstances. I am not aware of your situation with about ID being pulled. I don't know why your ID was pulled. But again, if you feel that something untoward was done to you, you have every right to talk about it. I don't interfere with people's right to their expressing themselves and the right to say what it is they are concerned about in relation especially to themselves. And so I don't oppose you on those issues. I don't know enough about them, but I certainly encourage anyone out there who is being affected negatively to speak up, because we live in a free society and you should be able to speak up in relation to matters that impact you. And so I have no quarrel with you there, but I just wanted you not to mischaracterize my representation tonight, because I couldn't care less about any firing, as people are saying. It doesn't affect me. In fact, I think it is a demonstration of how desperate Timothy Harris has become and how the country has become a laughing stock. When you see people like Juicy, them say them a foreign minister, and Wendy says she's tourism minister. I mean, the country's a laughing stock. I think everybody knows that. And Jean, I said I will come to poor Jean. Jean is now the deputy prime minister. I mean, anyway, I will leave Jean there because I have never concerned myself with people who are in the checkout lounge. I'm always concerned with those who are in the arrivals lounge. And Jean, my brother, you're gone. You've checked out. It's unfortunate that you allowed yourself to be bamboozled so that you're checking out, but not just checking out. You're checking out and having the label as someone who would have betrayed the People's Action Movement. It's not my business. I'm not a PAM. I'm not a PAM. But I think there's a level of cynicism. You don't even realize how cynical it was that Timothy Harris purported to give you precisely what your leader, Sean, had. Think about it. You could have got tourism, you could have got some other ministry. He said, no. I want it to be so in the face of everybody that I'm going to give you what Sean had. And you take it and put up on Facebook this morning that you're the new deputy prime minister. Well, I really don't know. I will not, my brother, say anything bad about you. You must know, and history will judge you. Let's go back to the phones. It is 5 minutes to the hour. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello? Hello?
Good evening.
You're on the mark. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. Good night, Premier.
Good night to you.
Well, I've been listening to you, and I understand that many years ago our foreparents were in slavery, and somebody had to fight, and I understand you're about 400 years, and they had to fight and fight to get out of the slavery. When I look at the political system within St. Kitts and Nevis, I look all the way back in the 70s when people like Fred Paris and all those guys were fighting for, when the time come that they would have made a mark, I mean, there was like betrayed by St. Kitts. Then Mr. Daniel Comfort, again he was, battered by the St. Kitts politician. Mr. Henry came by, they couldn't really ramp with him as they wanted to. Mr. Parry, he took over reign, and again he was swept under the rug. And now you come on the scene, and I want to say you are doing a good job. Continue to fight for the people of Nevis. Do not let down your arms. Do not give up. You are doing a good job. You are taking the fight to a higher level, and one day victory will come. Many may not be for you, but they, in time to come, may sit right in the seat where you are and enjoy the cream of the crop. So I want to say to you, continue
to fight the good fight for divisions. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother, and really appreciate it and the words of encouragement. And you can be assured that so long as I have breath, I will continue to do my very best. And I believe that's why people have elected me, you know. Over the years, people have said to me that, you know, oh, Mr. Amri had a different style, Mr. Amri was calm, and that is true. And he had his own style and he was loved. I am not that person. I am a different person, and I will put up with things for a while, but after a while I have to stand up and I have to speak out. And I believe that I gave Timothy Harris every opportunity to correct course, every opportunity in private to save this team, and every opportunity to do right by the island of Nevis. And that is why I say I have my string of letters. I'm happy I have them, because it shows that over the years, the efforts that I have made quietly and internally. And every time you make noise and you say, listen, this is not good enough, he said, well, okay, I'll give you extra this a month, and then we work it out, and you soon realize that it is just mama guy and cataflam, and no genuine effort at all to seek resolution and to abide by the agreements that have been made. It's as simple as that. Timothy Harris wants to be the next Denzel Douglas. He wants to be Prime Minister for 20 years or more, and he wants to have the country as his personal fiefdom. And I didn't support any king. I am not supporting of a monarchy. I want a Prime Minister who's responsive to the needs of the people and who recognizes that he serves the people, not himself. We want leaders who understand that it must be all of thee and none of us. And where those leaders are all of themselves and none of thee, then there is a big, big problem. I hope that your show tonight has been enjoyable and enlightening. The music has struck up. It means I have to go. I know I took a long time this evening setting out the case, but I'm happy that those who heard would have heard the facts, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And I will hope to come back soon to speak to the people of Nevis in a formal address, and I will do that in short order. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show for tonight. I want to thank all of you who tuned in. I want to thank those who called. I want to thank those who stuck with me, even through my long soliloquy. And I want to invite you to join us again next week, Wednesday, but to listen to this show again as it is rebroadcast tomorrow at 1 p.m. May you have a good night's rest, and may God continue to bless you, and may He continue to bless our beloved country. Good night, and God bless you.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers.